Welcome back to another episode of In the Sand podcast. I am excited, as always, for you to be back here once again, to be able to listen and view some great content. As always, we ask that you please please subscribe so we can continue to produce great content and move the game of basketball and really all sports ahead. I'm excited. I know most of y'all, as soon as you saw his name on the title, you knew who he was, and I'm so excited to have Coach Owen Miller on. Again, I don't know Coach personally, but I had an opportunity to be able to listen to him speak a couple weeks ago at our coaches clinic, the MAC clinic. But also, too, even before then, I don't know if Coach knows this or not, I always kind of watched him from a distance. And that's one thing about coaching. I don't know if a lot of us coaches admit that, but we always watching him. And so even as a young guy, I've always watched what he did at Gulfport. I always kept an eye on his teams. And everybody knows the great things he has done at Gulfport. And we're going to talk about that more. So I'm just excited to be able to chat it up with a guy who has a lot of knowledge. And I'm actually able to learn some things just listening to him talk, and hopefully continue to foster this relationship. So, Coach, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much for having me, man. You got a great platform, and it's an honor to be on. And thanks for giving me your time today, for sure.
Man, I thank you for giving me your time. You're the busy one. I know, just talking to some of my college friends and doing this podcast, for you all to be able to carve out some time is just grateful to me. So I thank you for saying that as well. Coach, again, I just want to kind of jump into it. I know, again, a lot of people are familiar with you, but a lot of people may not be familiar with drawing different people from different areas of the state, and hopefully in the country. So, Coach, you have such a great career. And I'm going to I want to take it piece by piece, but I just want you to just kind of introduce yourself first and just talk a little bit about your journey. But we're going to kind of go through your steps of your career and kind of where you are now. But just kind of give us a little bit so far to open up.
Yeah, man. I grew up in Gulfport, Mississippi, and I was a 1989 graduate of Gulfport High School, and played for the legendary Coach Burt Jenkins and his assistant, Coach Gerald Alston, who would become the head coach there, and had a great 3 years there. Was on back-to-back state championship teams, and played with Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. He was a year ahead of me, and what an experience to get to watch him and to grow up with him and to see how he worked at his trade every day, and then how he's lived his life. Just been a great example. Basically gave up his career for what he thought was right. And but anyway, I could go on and on about my times as a player at Gulfport High. It was just a great experience for me. And then out of high school, I went on and played at Lamar University for 2 years. And then I transferred and finished at Mississippi College under Coach Jones there and Coach Lofton and Coach Koenig, and had a great 2 years there. And then my career started professionally. Richard Williams at Mississippi State hired me. And I was with him at Mississippi State for 3 years, had 3 great years there, Coach. I mean, we went to a Final Four, Sweet 16, had a couple lottery picks, coached for a guy in Coach Williams that has probably forgotten more basketball than a lot of people know. And outside of that, was just a tremendous coach and how to run a program. I got to see that firsthand for 3 years. From there, I went to Texas San Antonio. Was there for 7 years with Tim Carter, another great coach. He's the all-time leader in wins there at UTSA. Had some good teams, went to 2 NCAA tournaments there. From there, I went to Colorado State for 2 years under Coach Dale Lair, who's now at Texas A&M with Buzz Williams. He's done a great job there. And then from there, I wanted to be a head coach. I was 17 years in Division I basketball, trying to get a head coaching job. Had some interviews. It didn't happen. And my alma mater, I come back, I leave Colorado State and go to Ole Miss with Andy Kennedy. I'm there 5 years. Had really good time there. And just Andy's a great coach. Learned a lot from Andy. Andy's just so well-rounded. He coaches, he recruits, he runs a program. Just got a lot of balance in what he does. And obviously he's very good at what he does. And was there for 5 years. That put me 17 years as an assistant coach. And then the Gulfport High job opened. And it was a job that obviously I played there and was able to get that job and spent the last 12 years there at Gulfport High School. And it was really hard to leave, Coach. It was a tough situation, but the situation that presented itself here at Gulf Coast was just something I couldn't turn down. And I think God put that in in my life like he does all of us for a reason. And so here I am. I was hired here April 6th, and we've just completed our roster for next year. We've got our guys in summer school, and we're getting after it. So that's where we are.
Coach, that's an extensive career, and I did my research, but again, I might have missed a few of those years, man. And coach,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing my math. I'm not very good at math, but it looks like this may start your 30th year in coaching, man. If I'm correct,
You're
or
correct. You're correct. And where does time go? This
coach,
is year 30 for me. This is year 30, and I look back on it, and I know I got fewer days than I've had. I don't have a lot of days left when you look at a whole career,
yeah,
and so you really just try to. As you get to my stage, I'm 53. I just turned 53, and still feel young. My health's good, Lord willing, and but you start looking at it a little differently. You look and you say, "Man, I don't have as long as I had," and so want to make this thing really good here and have a good run here at Gulf Coast.
yeah. Oh, coach, that's amazing, man. Coach, you don't look it, man. You don't carry yourself like.
Well, thank
So
you.
I promise you, man, because I'm doing the math and I'm like, man, coach, you got to
Yeah,
go on. Like I never would have guessed that, man, to be 30 years in the game. So I mean,
yeah.
you got a lot of knowledge, and this is why I like this platform too, coach, because a lot of people do know you, like myself. I know you from a distance. I didn't know you personally.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to watch some of the things that you have done in your career, but to be able to hear you kind of express those things and show your journey, man, you just don't know how that's going to help so many people with that.
Yeah,
And I just thank you for just being transparent with that. Because again,
absolutely.
people get caught up on, I don't let people know my age or this. I'm like, man, everybody's like, we talked about it before the podcast.
Yeah,
Man, the Father Time is catches up with everybody, and we all trying to get there. So, man, appreciate life and enjoy life. So, Coach, I thank you for that, man.
absolutely.
So, Coach, Let's kind of jump into it. I'm looking at my notes now. Let's talk about Gulfport, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Coach Jenkins is a legend there because if I'm not mistaken, is the gym or the floor named after
Correct.
him?
The
The gym.
gym, Bart Jenkins Gymnasium. Correct.
So, I kind of want you to talk about Coach Jenkins. Is Coach Austin was assistant? Was that right, Coach Austin?
Correct. And then he became the head coach when Coach Jenkins retired. Yeah.
Yeah. I want you to talk about those two guys first, and then I
Mm-hmm.
want you to just kind of talk about the decision that you made to go to Gulfport High School. And I know I'm gonna ask that
Mm-hmm.
later on, but man, just listening to you say that was just so amazing, man. So I kind of want you to
Mm-hmm.
talk about those coaches. I think sometimes as time goes on, people do forget about what Coach Jenkins and guys like that have done because of
Yeah.
time. But then just
Yeah.
talk about going back and just filling those shoes as as a kid growing up, admiring him. I
Yeah.
heard you talk about how much you really love Coach Jenkins, but talk about
Mm-hmm.
how was it to kind of step back in those shoes.
Yeah, my time at Gulfport High, I graduated in 1989, and interesting story. My father played on Coach Jenkins' very first team. I played on his last team.
That's cool.
Coach Jenkins' last season was 1989. That was my senior year, and growing up in Gulfport, my father took me to a ton of basketball games. My father played there, so I was in the gym a bunch watching Gulfport High play, and Coach Jenkins had gone off to war. He lost his leg. He was 18 years old when he went to war. His dream was to play basketball at Mississippi State. He was going to get to do that.
Mm.
Gets drafted, loses his leg, so his dream's over of playing college basketball, right? So, he goes to school there, gets his degree, becomes a coach, and he just had such a big impact on all of us. Our teammates get together in those teams that I played on, and even the guys before and after us, and they all talk about Coach Jenkins, the impact that he had in their life. And he didn't say a whole lot to us, Coach, when we were there. I mean, it wasn't. It was times were different. I mean, it wasn't like you go sit in his office and hang out and talk
Yeah.
about your day, but you knew he loved you, and you knew he cared for you, and he pushed you. And then when your playing time was over, your relationship became different with him. It was more friendly. He was easier to talk to, but you could call him anytime. He would check up on you all the time when you left. He would go see Mahmoud play over at LSU. Mahmoud tells his story,
Mhm.
and he would show up at the game and wouldn't even tell he was coming. He didn't want any limelight. Mike Mood's averaging 30 points as a freshman at LSU on
He
the
was.
cover of Sports Illustrated. And Coach Jenkins was always he didn't want the limelight. He was that kind of guy, but you knew he always supported you. And then as a coach, every decision we make at Gulf Coast and at Gulfport High, our staffs there, we would always ask, what would Coach Jenkins do? And so that's the impact, Coach, that he's had on me, that I'm always thinking about, what would he do in these situations? And he had some different, he was really, really disciplined and strict on us, but there were other areas where he wasn't, and he gave leeway. So he was just a unique person and a great man, and obviously he's had a huge impact on a lot of people.
Yeah. Man, coach, that's amazing. And that's kind of what you always want to hear from coaches. And I had to laugh at what you said because again, of course, you're a little bit older than I am, but we kind of grew up in that same generation
Mm-hmm.
where the head coach, he was almost like untouchable. And they're not saying that he
Yeah,
was above higher power, but you knew coach
sure.
was stern, you knew coach loved you, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't how it is now. And that's kind of where I struggled when I first started coaching because when I grew
Right,
up,
right.
I saw that. But now
Yeah,
these coach, you gotta invite them to the office. You gotta put your arms around.
yes,
Them. You gotta
yeah,
do social media. They say, "Well, coach, come and do this TikTok dance." You're like, "I really don't want to do it, but you gotta kind of do some
yeah,
stuff."
yeah.
Yeah, out of the box.
You do.
It's funny that you said that, and I'm gonna get back later on in the interview because you said some good things that I heard at the clinic about how you try to reach the kids and the things that you've done. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna save that part. I do want to stop right here and talk about Mr. Mahmoud. I saw a
Mm-hmm.
documentary. I can't remember where I saw it, and you spoke highly about some things that
Mm-hmm.
really I admired because it was some touchy things that happened. It was some touchy things just growing up in Mississippi in the South.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I do admire about what you did, Coach, and this is before again I even just really knew you, is that you spoke in a way where you called a spade a spade. You knew some things wasn't as good as they could have been, but at the
Wasn't
same
right. Wasn't right. Yeah.
yeah, you did, but you didn't say it. You didn't turn the your segment into a
Yeah.
negative thing. You took a
Right.
negative and you moved it to a positive, coach. And that's one thing
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate about you is that your love for people. Coach, talk to me about how growing up in Mississippi, how did you navigate? I'm going to say that it's probably because your parents, because you talked about them earlier, but talk about how did you navigate those ideas to say, hey, I'm gonna love people in spite of whatever's going on around me. And then just talk a
Yeah.
little bit about Mahmoud, just some of his greatness. I know people have heard it, but it's good to hear from people who actually lived it and walked
Yeah. I was raised by two wonderful parents, and I think we model our people at home. I mean,
it.
kids are going to model what they see at home, right? And
Good point.
we see that especially in high school. Kids come to school and they're modeling what they see at home, how their parents act or parent acts. But I had great parents. But I came up in the '80s. Like I said, I finished in '89.
Mhm.
Uh, there weren't a whole lot of white kids playing basketball in the state of Mississippi, or at least in the bigger schools in the South, more
Yeah,
so in the North. So I was in a situation, Coach, where I was one or two of the white kids and everybody else was African American. And so we played 30 games a summer. And so those were my buddies. That's who I was with all the time after school on the weekends. And so as a kid, growing up in those times, and probably still even today, uh, when you're kind of the one that looks a little different, uh, I got a firsthand experience to see how some of my teammates got treated outside of basketball, outside of school, based on the color of their skin.
yeah,
And so when you have those experiences, and those are people you love and you care about and you're going to battle with every day,
yeah,
it had a big impact on me. And so in seeing that and living in some of that, it gives you different perspective, right? I mean, it gives you a different way to maybe see things than the way you do walking in your shoes. So it was a great educational experience for me. You know, my dad always told me growing up, he coached us in Pee Wee that, you never judge somebody by how they look, regardless of what color they are, or if they have issues. You just don't do that. And so when you grow up in an environment like that daily, and you see adults taking stands for things of that nature, Well, you're going to model that, right? And so a lot of that goes due to my parents. And then when you really get to know people, when you get to sit down with them and you get to go to war with them and you break bread with them and you go to the movie with them or whatever it may be, you find out in a hurry, man, that we're all the same. We just maybe look a little different.
That's true. Man, that's a good point that you made, Coach. And I probably haven't shared this publicly, but my story was kind of similar. It was just in a little bit of reverse, because all my life I grew up around people who were African American, and so
Mm-hmm.
when I got the assistant coaching job at Germantown High School,
Mm-hmm.
the roles flipped. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
around more people who look different than me, and I took
sure.
the that you had, Coach, and I have to give testament to my parents as well, because my parents just told me to love people, and just treat people, and instill a lot of Christian values in me. And I
Yeah,
went in with that notion because I was going to go. At first, I was thinking, well, I heard these things, boom, boom, boom. But
right,
I, I
right.
was able to experience people and see at the end of the day, Coach, everybody is the same. And so,
Mm-hmm.
leaving my community and going to a new place that was totally different from me really changed my life. So I'm like you. I'm grateful for it, and I'm able to be able to just branch out and meet all type of people. And that's another reason I like this podcast as well, because it allows me to do that just on a bigger scale, but I try to do it on an everyday basis. And I wish that more people would take the mindset that you had, Coach, and just say, hey, let me step out and do something different. And I think our world would be so much of a better place. So hopefully, what we saying now may go beyond. And it's
Yeah,
nothing that we planned at all. Coach and I would just really
sure.
open
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
I thank you for sharing that, Coach. Um,
yes.
Talk about playing with my mood just for a little bit. I know you
Mm-hmm.
spoke about it many, many times. Just give us a little bit of just into his greatness, because a lot of times
Yeah,
when you play with great players, you don't realize they're great because you see them every day, and that's kind of the thing that we take for granted. Even like when we look at our professional athletes, I remember just watching Michael Jordan growing up and just didn't appreciate his greatness because you saw him every day. Then when he leaves, you're like, okay, I see the greatness in it. And
yeah.
some people say the same thing about LeBron James as well. So just talk about just playing with Mr. Mahmoud.
Yeah, at a young age, he was different. Junior high coach, he was getting up before school and going down to the park and outside park there on Second Street in Gulfport and would play for an hour. Sun's not even up yet, and he'd play for an hour. This is sixth and seventh grade.
Mm.
The work ethic, the commitment to being as good as he possibly could be, the discipline to stay in shape and to work on his craft day after day after day after day, to shoot every shot like a game shot, to never be satisfied in his journey and where he's at. It was incredible to watch, and he was an everyday dude, man. I mean, there was never a day he had a bad practice as it related to his effort, as it related to his focus, and he had the biggest imagination of any basketball player, coach I've ever been around. His imagination is beautiful. He would always envision himself somebody guarding him. He would pick raindrops out of the air as he was shooting in the rain, and he had to go between his legs and cross over and shoot it before the raindrop hit the ground. I mean, stuff you can't make up, stuff you don't ever hear about. And then
Yeah.
the time he put in, the time was just it was incredible the amount of time at a young age he put in. He was just different, man. And we all worked at it. The rest of our team worked at it and put a lot of time in, but nothing like him. I mean, it was a daily thing that he had to do every day and had a passion for it, and he lived it. He lived what he was doing, and it was a blessing to be around and to see how far he took it was just incredible. How good he became. So it was a lot of fun. Learned a lot.
That's pretty cool, Coach, to be able to just be around like great individuals like that. It makes a difference. And of course, man, just unfortunately, things didn't go as probably should have
Yeah.
went. But again, you appreciate the sacrifice that he made for what he thought was right. So big shout out to Mr. Mahmoud. He balling in that what's the lead?
Yeah. 3-on-3 league, Ice Cubes league.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's
He's
balling in
54 years old, man. Can still
it.
do it.
He makes it look
Yeah.
easy, but it's kind of what you said too. It's a dedication to doing things that other
Yeah.
people don't want to do. All
Yeah.
right, Coach. Let's kind of jump into your college career. You mentioned
Mhm.
it already. I know it's a long career, but let's just talk a little bit about each stop, Coach, and kind of whatever
Mhm.
you just want to kind of share about each stop. Take as long as you need to, but just kind of give us a walk down memory lane as you go from Lamar College. And you kind of end up at Ole Miss, because I think that's a great story to have. It's a lot of individuals that want to be college coaches, so I think it's a good opportunity to be able to see it, because I can guarantee in probably some of your stories, even though it's great to be a college coach, I know some challenges along the way. So, Coach, just kind of just walk us down memory lane, because
Yeah.
this is the part I'm excited just to learn about your college journey.
Yeah, I got my break right out of college. I was, like I said, I finished it with Coach Mike Jones at Mississippi College, and Richard Williams was the head coach at Mississippi State. And I had gone to Coach Williams camps as a kid. They recruited Mahmoud, so I was a year behind Mahmoud. So I had a relationship with Coach Williams as a kid going to his camp, and they came down and recruiting Mahmoud and got a chance to know those guys. So I go off to college. I would have loved to play at Mississippi State. I wasn't good enough. I went to started at Lamar in Beaumont, Texas. After 2 years, transferred to Mississippi College, and Mississippi State. As soon as I finished my college degree there at Mississippi College, Coach Williams has got a spot on his staff as his third assistant. And at that time, it was called the restricted earnings coach. You could only have two full-time coaches in Division One basketball and a
Wow.
restricted earnings coach. There were three of us. And so now it's changed. You can have 10, 12 assistant coaches. But anyway, I got a unbelievable break to be able to get in there with Coach Williams, and he gave me my first opportunity. Rick Stansbury was on that staff, who just retired at Western Kentucky. He's now with Penny Hardaway at Memphis. Greg Carter was also on that staff. Greg was a great player at Mississippi State. Won several state championships at Starkville High School. Now he's the AD at Hattiesburg, athletic director. George Brooks was also on that staff. He was just getting out of school. He was a graduate assistant. George has now been an assistant there at Mississippi State for a long time. So I was there for 3 years with Coach Williams. My first year we go to Sweet 16. My second year we go to Final Four. Won the SEC tournament, beat Kentucky in the SEC championship. Would go on to lose to Syracuse in the Final Four, and was there the next year. Get a break at Mississippi State. I wasn't allowed to recruit. Only two assistants were allowed to recruit. So I go to Texas San Antonio. I'm able to recruit there. We go to two NCAA tournaments at UTSA. Only finished worse than second in that league once. So I had a really good 7 years there. We had good players. Had a kid named Devin Brown that won a couple championships with the Spurs. Had another kid out of Memphis, McEverett Powers, who was player of the year in our league. So we got some good players, obviously, to win like we did. And then made the next step, went to Colorado State for 2 years with Coach Lair. And then from Colorado State, Andy Kennedy hires me at Ole Miss when he gets the job there. Spent 5 years with Andy and learned an incredible. I mean, and you can see what he's done at UAB and he did at Ole Miss. But Andy's probably the most well-rounded guy I work for. I mean, he can do everything. He can coach and recruit, evaluate. He's just really, really good at what he does. And so, man, I got a great experience those 17 years of coaching. I tell you one thing I would do different, though. You know, a lot of people say, and I may have, I don't think I said this at the clinic, and I wish I would have. Um, as I look back, I don't have any regrets, but I think to say, man, I would do exactly what I did would be a mistake, because obviously as you look back, you may make a couple changes. The advice I would give to young coaches: become a head coach as soon as you can.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
become a head coach. It doesn't matter what level. I've done this 29 years now, and only 12 of those has been as a head coach. And I think if I could have been a head coach sooner in my career, I would have been a better assistant coach. And so, as I look back on that, I don't know if that even presented itself, but as I look back, that would probably be one change I would make. But with that being said, I got 17 years as an assistant coach. It prepared me for what was ahead of me, my 12 years as a head coach, going on 13 now. But a great experience. I've been around the world with basketball, worked for great people, worked on great staffs, and have been able to learn a lot through those years.
Coach, that's amazing, man. I've taken some notes, man, but I want to ask this one first before I get into my notes when you were speaking. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think I know where you're going with it, but I want to just hear and make sure we're on the same path. You say
Mhm.
you wish you would have been a head coach first,
Mhm.
because I would have made you a better assistant. Speak a little bit about that, coach.
Yeah, I just think I think just speaking from my experience, okay, when you become a head coach, uh, you think differently. Your thoughts uh, are more focused or more detailed. You put a little more time into why we're going to do things, especially in recruiting. When I got this job April 6th, there were still a couple of kids left in the state, and we went out and talked to them, and got a great assistant here, Coach Wyndham, um, and we met with them. We met with their parents, and a couple of them, and we just told Coach, I said, Coach, he won't work for us. That's not gonna be a good fit. I don't know that we can get the best out of him because of how we're going to do things. That doesn't mean what we're doing is the only way or the right way, but it's the way we're going to do it. And
Yeah.
so when you become a head coach, I think you establish some firm beliefs and things that you're going to stand firm on, and things that you're going to say yes to or no to, and you've got some staples that hey, we're going to stand on this, and this is who we're going to be.
I think that's powerful what you said, because a lot of times this job is harder than what it looks. And it
Mm-hmm.
takes experiences, it takes trial and error, and it takes being in different positions to be able to understand it, to kind of get it right and moving in the right direction. So I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times young coaches need to hear this, and hopefully, when they see your name, hopefully they watch it. But hopefully that coaches do see what you just said, because it is levels to it. And I think you need
Mm-hmm.
to be a head coach. I think also too, and you said this too. I think great head coaches become great head coaches because they've been an assistant before. Because when you're an assistant,
Absolutely.
and you said it, just giving shout out to Coach Wyndham, and we'll talk about him in just a second. But we all know that assistant coaches pull a lot of the weight. They make our
Yeah.
job very easy, and that's why you see so many people being very particular about who they hire as an assistant, because your
Mm-hmm.
assistant got to be your right hand man, your right hand woman. So, I thank you for sharing that, because that's powerful. You be able to say that. And I was talking to my brother Justin about it, about being a head coach. A head coach, it opens the doors in so many ways. Just not for saying showing people that you have been in, but it just exposes you to some things that you just can't get.
Yes, that's a
See,
good point.
I was listening to that staff you had at Mississippi State, coach. Every guy you name, I knew him, but I didn't realize that the staff was that stacked. You got Coach
Yeah.
Stanford, you got Coach Miller, you got Coach Carter, Coach Brooks. I mean, all of those
Yeah.
guys are still doing great things now. So that was amazing staff. So Coach Richard Williams really knew, what he was doing with that staff. Coach, talk to me about the Sweet 16. I know it was a while ago, the Final Four. That had
Yeah. Yeah.
that had to be amazing, because that's kind of all our dreams.
Man,
Talk to us just
man.
a kind of just take us back to just that feeling.
Yeah, that was my first 2 years in coaching, and I just, I've been awfully blessed to be at the right place at the right time, and
Yes, sir.
to be with the right people. I've gotten under the right people. Uh, Richard Williams and Andy Kennedy in the state of Mississippi are two guys in our circles that everybody knows, and
That's
I've,
it.
I've had the opportunity to work for both of them.
Mhm.
But it was my first year. We went to the Sweet 16. We lost to UCLA. If you remember, uh, UCLA would go on to win the national championship that year.
Yeah.
And in the second round in Boise, Idaho, UCLA made a shot. Tyus Edney made a shot at the buzzer to beat Missouri for them to advance, to see us in the round of 16. We're at the game watching it. We think we're getting Missouri. We're sitting there holding our
Yeah.
breath. Obviously, UCLA was the number one seed. I think Missouri was like an 8 or 9. We were a 5 seed or 6 seed that year. And so anyway, and they beat us by 15 in the Sweet 16. They were really, really good. Now, what that set us up for the next year was a Final Four run.
Yeah.
We would come back the next year. We'd win the SEC tournament in New Orleans in the Superdome, beating Kentucky, who would go on to win the national championship. We added Dante Jones to that team, along with Eric Dampier and
Yeah.
Daryl Wilson and
Mhm.
Marcus Bullard. I mean, we had a really good team, and we had a lot of depth. Bubba Wilson, Russell Walters, Bart Height, Whit Hughes. I mean, could go on and on. We had real dudes, and we had pros. We had 2 lottery picks.
Yeah, I did.
And Syracuse beat us in the national semifinal game. Coach Boeheim, and Kentucky would beat them 2 nights later in the national championship game. That'd be Rick Pitino's first at Kentucky. But it was just an incredible experience, and that was in my first 2 years, Coach. It was almost like, man, it's going to be like this every year. I've been chasing that now for the last 27 years to get back to there. So, but it was an incredible experience. I'll never forget it. Still remember all those guys on the team. Have really visible memory still that I go back to and think about. So it was just a fantastic experience.
Man, Coach, that's exciting, man. Just to listen to you, that gets me excited to hear that, man. And shout out to Coach Wilson, man. That story that you shared at the Mac Cleaning with Coach Wilson, man, about his confidence with shooting, that was an amazing story. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
great, man. Um, Anthony Kennedy, man, is a good coach too, from Ole Miss, man. I think they didn't. I think they could allow him to stay a little bit longer, but we know how the
Mm-hmm.
business works, because he was doing some things very good, and that was, I say, was very important to the state of Mississippi, because of course, Ole Miss had the good run back when they had the
Mm-hmm.
Sweet 16 run, and then for him to be able to put them back in the position to be successful, being a Mississippi guy, I thought that uh, his time was cut a little bit shorter than it needed, because he had him moving in the right direction, man.
I agree totally. And stuff happens. Um, in high level basketball, these Power Five schools. I had a coach tell me one time early in my career, um, man, after about as an assistant or a head coach, after about 6, 7, 8 years, man, it's probably time to go.
Yeah,
Because especially in 90% of these jobs, I mean, we're human beings, okay? And so you're there 10, 11 years, and you've done a heck of a job, and a job that's probably one of the tougher in your league.
yep,
And you have a tough year, and they want something new. We always want something new. That's human nature. We want the new thing. And Andy got that thing going. And another thing he did that he doesn't get enough credit for, he brought momentum and excitement back to Ole Miss basketball.
he did.
Style of play
Yeah,
was really out in the community. Anybody could come up and talk to him. He's an open book. He'll talk to anybody. He's doing the same thing at UAB. And but it's worked out for him. And then Coach Davis came, fantastic coach. Kermit Davis
yeah,
followed him and
mm-hmm.
had his first couple years with the guys that basically Andy had brought in there, and they added some pieces. They had a lot of success.
Yeah,
But it's a tough business, and there's only a handful of Mike Krzyzewskis out there that stay at one place forever.
yeah,
Uh, you look at guys now, you just don't see guys like that. Jim Boeheim, we may never see another guy like him that
yeah,
spends his whole career at one school. It's just almost impossible. So as society changes, our business changes. And
yeah.
so the days of staying somewhere 20, 25 years, that's dinosauric almost, you know.
Yeah, it really is though, and it's hard to say that, because when you and I were growing up, that was what we were taught: is find you a good place and
Yeah.
do good work. If you show yourself dedicated and faithful, people gonna have you around a lot. And now we get to a spot where now that's unheard of. So I thank you for sharing that. One thing I did like about Coach Kennedy as well is that there were a lot of Mississippi guys on that team, on those field, on his teams that he had. There's a lot of guys from the Jackson area. But it was good to see Mississippi guys. That's one thing that I see a lot of our coaches are kind of getting around back to, is Mississippi guys. And I think that's where your fan base builds, because when you got people from the state, people going to come out because they can recognize that face. And not knocking our out of state, because we love them as well.
Yeah,
But
sure,
it's
sure.
always good to put your arms around a hometown kid from the state, local city. So let's dive back into this. Go back into Gulfport. We say we're going to get back to it, Coach. Gulfport may have been probably the time where people can really get to see what Coach Miller could really do. And to me, I think, and it could be my personal opinion, I think that's kind of where the light has shined on you, which made it available for you to put yourself back into where you are at Mississippi Gulf Coast
Mm-hmm.
because of
Mm-hmm.
the structure of all your teams, the way you branded your teams, the style of play, the competition level, and just really letting people know that basketball is really played in the South at a
Yeah.
high level.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about that. Um, talk about maybe some of this. I'll say it like this, just because it may turn in a different direction, and I don't want
Yeah.
to miss any story. So let's go this. Just kind
Mm-hmm.
of walk us through your whole time at Gulfport. Maybe some of the highs, maybe some of the lows.
Yeah.
Just the pride of going back, and just talk about just that orange and blue that you all made just so popular.
Yeah, I got the job and I followed a good coach, Ricky Stone, who also had some time. It's funny, I replaced Coach Stone at Mississippi State. When I got the job at Mississippi State, he was leaving. He was a high school coach at Stone High School, won a championship there, won a championship at Harrison Central. Anyway, I replaced him, so I walked into a good situation. I
Okay.
walked into a place that the guys had been coached, they'd been held accountable. All those things were in place. The thing we had to do, I think that the biggest thing that we had to do when we got there is we just had to raise the expectation. We had to, when I got there, we'd won 8 state championships. We won another one in 2014 to make it 9. And I think that's the most in, I guess it would be 7A now. I mean, we've got 9 state championships. I don't think anybody in our classification at the time has that many state. I think Lanier's got 8 maybe.
Mhm.
But anyway, they're a smaller classification. But there's just been a tremendous amount of history at Gulfport High School. So I wanted to make sure our guys understood that first,
Yeah.
understood the people that came before them, the players, the coaches, and that they understood, hey, man, you're in a program that's got deep history that a lot of people care about that came before you. And so, not saying that wasn't there, but that was important to me, being an alumni from there, playing in that program. I just wanted to make sure that they understood the opportunity they were in, who they were representing, and I think they figured that out in a hurry. When I got there, I think one of the things I did I think that talking to our guys that got their attention, they had just won the district championship, and they had T-shirts made up with district champs. And so I got the job there. And in our first meeting with them, in our first team meeting, there were some shirts left over. And I held the shirts up and said, we won district. And he said, yeah, coach. Yeah. And they were all fired up. And I kind of looked somber. And I said, well, guys, that kind of shook my head. And I said, that's not what this thing's about. And I took the box and I emptied those shirts into the trash can.
Mm.
In their mouths, they were just didn't really know. They just looked at me like I was crazy. I said, guys, we've got to get to the Final Four, and walked them out into the arena. And I said, look up in those rafters up there. How many district championship banners are up there? They said, none, coach. I said, well, how many banners are up there? They said 8, and they were all for state championships. I said, that's what we've got to raise. That's what we're playing for. And we
Mm.
had really good talent in. I had some really good teams, had a couple Division I guys, had a lot of junior college guys. And they took that and they ran with it. And it took us 3 years to win a state championship, but we did it with a lot of those guys that were with us our first year. And those guys, those seniors and juniors, those first 2 years really bought in. And we got that thing turned and we got it back going just by kind of changing our expectation, I think was the biggest thing we did.
Coach, that's amazing. I guess I got to give props to my brother, Coach Justin Sanders. He says that all the time because we're in this era where we celebrate everything, district championships, boom, boom, boom. But he said at the end of the day, he said, Coach, what matters is those banners for championships. And he says that
Yeah.
all the time. And he tell kids
Mhm.
that all the time. He said, yeah, they won district because we were at a school and we were trying to build the expectation, we raise the expectation, right?
Yeah, and it's different at every place, right? Every place is it may be to win a district championship is the big goal, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. But you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what he was
Yeah.
saying. He said, "I agree with you. We should celebrate district championships, but let's not let the kids think that this is just the pinnacle of it. Like we got somewhere we
Right.
trying to go." So he's speaking
Right.
that same voice. I know him listening to this
Yeah.
going to be smiling,
Yeah.
forgetting. Um, talk about the 2014 championship run. I think at that time I might have been in my 4th or 5th year coaching, so I kind of remember that
Mm-hmm.
run vaguely. I knew that you all were always at the top of like 1 or 2 in the state that entire year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of people don't realize this until you actually coach a championship team. When you win that championship, and Coach Ernie Watson kind of talked about this a little bit, you can finally breathe. Because even though you may
Yeah.
have the most talented kids, or you may just be picked overall to be number one and win it, that's a lot that comes with it. Because we talk about the
Yeah.
target on your back, we talk about the expectations. I know Coach Tadlock, who speaks highly of you, and vice versa. He said the same thing year after year because it's tough when you're expected to win it. So kind of walk us down the 2014 championship run.
Yeah, we had been to the Final Four the 2 years prior. We had gone 29-5 both years. Uh, we were really, really close. And the 2014 team was not as talented as the year before. We weren't as deep. And we were smaller. It was the smallest team I've ever had. In my 12 years at Gulfport High, it was the smallest team we had. We started a 5'6" point guard. We had a 5'9" guy at the 2. We had a 6-foot guy at 3, a 6-foot guy at 4, and then our center was 6'3", 155 pounds. We were little, but we were really, really, really competitive. And I had some guys that had to win. I mean, they were. And it was that way every day in practice, Coach. I mean, it was, we were coming off those 2 years when we were so close, and they were still hungry. And our practices is what got us there. And we had experience, and we had guys. It was you look back on all the great teams that you're a part of. They were so bought in.
Yeah.
The buy-in was easy. The buy-in didn't take till Christmas. The buy-in didn't take the first 2 months of practice. They were bought in from the time we began in the summer, playing summer league games going into that season. So that's what I remember most about that group, is how bought in they were. There was some really, really important times during that season. We lost. The last game we lost was at Warren Central. We had won like 20 straight. We go up to Warren Central, who had a good team. And we laid an egg, Coach. We weren't motivated. We didn't compete like we had competed. After we go in after that game, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I didn't have to say a word, Coach. I had guys standing up, guys that weren't our leading scorer, guys that weren't our leading minutes guys that weren't the guys when you came to see us play. That's the guy you got to watch. Stood up in that dressing room and says, "Guys, this isn't good enough."
Yeah.
And I've never, even in college, I never had that experience with a team where you come in after you lose a hard game, which you didn't play well. And that's it. At the end, that's on me. That's on the coach. We weren't ready to play for whatever reason. But the players stood up and addressed it. And we walked out of that dressing room, and I knew then. I said, "We're for real. we got a real chance." And we just took off after that game. Our practices raised the level. If we're supposed to beat you 20, we did. We had no letdowns, and we had a focus the last 4 or 5 weeks of practice like none I've ever seen on a team. It was just a fun to be a part of. Yeah.
Those moments are always one that you remember because it's just something about that lets you know. Because we always, as coaches, we're always looking for some sign to let us know that everything's going to be okay. So it's good when you can finally see that in your team. Coach, remind me, who did you all play for the championship that year?
We beat Grenada in the state final that year. Had a good team. They beat Provine
Yep.
in the semifinal. We beat Madison Central, in the semifinal. And Grenada had the big kid. They were good. They had the kid that
I can't think
that
of his
was that ended up going to Louisiana Tech, 7-footer, average a triple double. What was his name?
I can't think of. I know they used to call him Slim, but I cannot think of his
Slim,
name.
good player. Average a triple double his senior year. Was a really good player. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. So let's talk about this, Coach. Now let's talk about your transition to Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College.
Mm-hmm.
I know that had to be a tough decision because again, you did something that I wish, I say I wish I would have liked to have done when I was at my alma mater, bring my school to state championship, and you was able to
Mm-hmm.
do that at your alma mater. But then the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College job comes available. Coach, Talk to us about the mindset that you had with making up in your mind that I have to leave here at Gulfport.
Yeah.
Talk about your interview process because I
Mhm.
think that's important. And we've been talking about this on a number of podcasts. And the reason I'm saying is because I'm trying to help someone out because the interview really is the separation between if they're going to
Mhm.
pick you or not. Because we all
Right.
know coaches are good because they're not going to call you or bring you in, but it got to be something that sticks out, like you said, to say, hey, I know that this guy is the person for the job. So again, just
Yeah.
talk about the decision to leave Gulfport, and then talk about the interview process, and then we'll just kind of start as we begin to wrap the show up. We just kind of talk about what you got going on right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. You hit it on the head, coach. I mean, it was hard. I mean, it was I don't know if you've been down here lately, but it's a great place. The facilities are. We've got a brand new arena, brand new weight room, brand new dorms, cafeteria. We've got everything in place. Strength and conditioning coaches. Uh, Learning resources as it relates to tutoring. I mean, everything's in place, and it's a 25-minute drive. I didn't have to move, coach. My wife's got a great job on the coast. So that part of it made it easy. And as a believer and as a Christian, I think that inner voice that talks to us sometimes, those instincts, I think, I listen to those, and I have times of reflection when I pray and when I meditate and just try to ask God to intervene with what I'm doing every day. And I just had a strong feeling that this was something I needed to pursue. Um, and the more we got into it, the more I saw that, hey, I think this is something I need to try to do, and was fortunate to get an interview. Um, they had a great field of guys that interviewed for the job. And I did my first interview with the committee, and then they brought me back up, me and my wife, and we sat down with the president and her family and had dinner and met with her.
Mm.
And the next morning they called me and offered me the job, and I didn't hesitate to take the job. And I think there's something with that, though, that I would like to say that I think is important. I get this question a lot. Well, did you tell Gulfport High you were interviewing for the job? And so that for especially for a young coach can be a little bit difficult
It is.
to manage. And my advice is, yeah, man, you got to tell them. I got a call from Gulf Coast, and hey, are you interested? I am. I picked up as soon as I got off that call. I called my athletic director, Coach Walters, said, hey, Coach, I've talked with Gulf Coast. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to apply for the job. Don't know if I'm going to get an interview, but as we went along and as I got the interview, I just made sure my people at Gulfport High knew exactly what was going on. There wasn't a situation where I had to call my boss and say, hey, man, I just took the job at Gulf Coast and he doesn't even know I interviewed. So I kept them at bay and made sure they were aware of what was going on. And then uh, me and my athletic director, he says, hey, if they offer you the job, you're going to take it. I said, yeah, coach, I think if I'm offered it after meeting with them, I think this is what I need to do. And so it was a great transition as it relates to that with my former school. And, I think going into an interview, you need to remember, man, if I don't get this, I still need the job I got,
Yeah.
so, so you don't want to mess that one up either. So that's important,
I'm glad you shared that, Coach, and that's why again that's going to help a lot of individuals out because sometimes I know when I was younger, I thought about, well, I wonder if I go apply for this job, don't tell them,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll be okay because you in your mind you're thinking, well, they're probably gonna be upset. But what I quickly learned is, and somebody gave me some advice, so you need to tell them. But what I learned, if you're a great candidate or even a good candidate, as soon as you walk out that door, they're gonna pick their phone up and call your job before you even get back to your car. And
That's
so
exactly right.
learn that you got to be able to do things the right way, coach. So again, you helping a lot of young coaches out, and maybe some veteran coaches because some people may just not know that. So
Yeah.
coach, when you get to Mississippi Gulf Coast, I know Coach Hope Adams. She was on here and she spoke highly about just
Mm-hmm.
what it's like down there. And I'm planning on trying to get to a game. Hopefully, maybe y'all come a little bit closer this way. But I'm trying to
Yeah. Yeah.
support all of my people who support me.
Mhm.
Coach, talk to us a little bit about what you got going on in Mississippi Gulf Coast, because you know it, and I know it, and most coaches who have been new, when you're a new coach, it doesn't matter if you got 10 years in the game, 20, or the first year. Transition in, like in any part of life, is always a challenge, coach. So kind of just walk us through about kind of where you are now and what you're trying to set up and establish, and some of the ups and downs of just trying to get this thing rolling, because a lot of our coaches who are listening going to be head college coaches or head high school or head junior high
Mhm.
coach. Maybe something you can say can kind of help make that process easier, because we don't have that
Yeah.
we don't have that conversation enough, and we need to talk
Yes.
coaches, and that helps us be successful, because at the end of the day, we in this together. So, coach, just kind of tell us about what you got going on right now at Gulf Coast.
Yeah. Well, we got the job here April 6th, the biggest thing was to evaluate our roster and our coaching staff. Um, Coach Wyndham was already here. I had begun a relationship with Coach Wyndham. We had several kids that signed with Jones Junior College in the early signing period, and
Right.
so and a lot of people in the state recruited those guys at Gulfport. And anyway, they made a good choice there at Jones with Coach Miller. Great program. He'll do a good job with them. But um, he was in our gym. He got here. He got the job late. He got here at the end of the summer, so he didn't really get to do anything in the summer. So I was impressed with him then. And then when I got to school here and I began sitting down with our guys, and I think the first thing you have to do when you get a new job is you better establish relationships immediately upon getting a job. That starts with your staff. Maybe you're going to hire a whole new staff. We hired one new guy here. We kept Keith. And then you better create relationships with your players. You better get to know those guys. So I brought our players in. I did no team meetings. I was here about the last 3 weeks of school. We brought back 5 guys from last year's team. Had a bunch leave that graduated. We had some transfer that after meeting with them, we agreed that, hey, this is probably the best thing. We need to part ways. And so we mutually agreed to do that. But you've got to get to know your kids. And so I just did individual meetings with them, no team meetings. Didn't do any coaching the last 3 weeks. We played pickup ball, and I just watched, coach. I just watched. I saw how they reacted. I saw how they interacted. I would bring them in individually and meet with them. I may eat breakfast with them. I may eat lunch with them. So I was trying to create trust. I was trying to create them to trust me, and I was trying to find out, hey, can this work? Is this young man, going to be a good player for us? Can he do the things we need him to do? So. And then I wanted them to trust me. If we're going to coach them as coaches, there has to be trust. He's got to know that, hey, Coach Miller or Coach Wyndham or Coach Barton, they care for me. They're going to coach me hard, and I'm going to listen. So I'm still trying to build trust with them. We've got all our in-state guys here now, and we're practicing, we're lifting weights, we're conditioning. But coach, I think just as important and maybe more is these couple 4 weeks that we have together, that we're creating relationships and getting a buy-in, getting these guys to buy into what we're about. And I think we're doing that. We still got a ways to go. We don't have our out-of-staters here yet. We'll have them in August, but I think we're getting there. But I just think it's critical as a new coach or having a new team that there's got to be some trust. There's got to be some truth. And we can begin to build those relationships to do the things we need to do.
I think that's important, and that's kind of what you and I talked about early. Like, you know, maybe our coaches probably went and sat down and ate lunch with us and ate breakfast with us or brought us in, but that's kind of where we are in this era.
Yes.
And I'm excited that you and so many other coaches are evolving with that, because you have to keep evolving. I know sometimes in life, and we're all like this, we all kind of get stuck in our ways, but it's amazing to be able to continue to keep changing with times. Coach, let me ask you this. How do you, and I've asked all my college coaches this, because, one day I'll hopefully be able to coach in college, but I know one part that is challenging. There's a couple parts that's challenging, but I know one that stands out to me is, how do you balance it all, coach? Because again, everybody knows, you love your family. No, nothing takes that place. You and I talked about that a little bit earlier. And then there's so many more tasks. In high school, it was kind of easy to kind of plan your schedule, because you already you knew that 8 to 10 hours of the day was going to be blocked with school, so you can kind of work
Right.
around. College is
Right.
so it's not
Hmm.
open, but I'm saying it's flexibility because of scheduling, but also too you have to meet the mandates that require from you of practice time, etc. So, Coach, how do you juggle all that, man?
Yeah, Andy Kennedy used to always say we're creatures of habit, man. We're
Yeah,
creatures of habit. And so I think the thing that we're doing here is as a staff we're creating our habits. We're dedicating this part of the day to this. We're dedicating this hour to that. We have systems in place that we're still establishing on how we're going to go about doing our business. And so for me, the discipline of having those things, having my day organized from 8 to 9, I'm going to do this from 9, whatever it may be, to have those in place to keep us in balance, to keep us making sure we're touching all the parts of our program that we need to touch. And then, we're always recruiting. How can we do a better job in recruiting? How can we promote our program a little bit more through social media?
yeah,
Those are some areas that I'm having to grow. In high school, those were kind of in place. And
yeah,
obviously college, we're all over the state recruiting, and then we get a handful of out-of-staters. So how are we going to promote our program to not just Gulfport, but to the whole state of Mississippi, so these young men can see what we're about? So that's been the biggest change for me as it relates to recruiting, is the social media aspect. When I got out of college 12 years ago, that was just kind of getting going,
yeah.
and it's amazing how far it's come in 12 years.
I know it. Yeah, that social media thing, it's different, coach, and the kids love it, and that's one thing you have to do. And I've heard Coach Deion Sanders say that a
Mhm.
lot of what he did was through social media, and you saw it. Like even keep up with him now, even at Colorado, man. It's been like every hour, every 2 hours, they sending something out.
It's incredible what he does. It's
It,
incredible.
it is though. And as an adults, we like, man, but kids, man, they thrive
Yeah.
on that and they looking forward to
Yeah.
them. So I agree though. And so I would say that too in high school, and Coach Miller, he just said that as well. When you're on the high school level as a high school coach, start working on some of those things so it makes it
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
easier to
Hmm.
be able to
And you
transition.
promote yourself. We as coaches, social media is a great way to promote what you're doing, promote your program.
Yeah.
If I was back in high school, I would have done more in social media.
Hmm.
I would have done more promoting our program on social media. You don't think of that because you're just in your little small community, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think it benefits you. I think it helps. It can't hurt you. You know,
That's true. Well, coach, to be honest, man, and I'm not just saying this. I thought that y'all did a good job at Gulfport because again,
we're
me
good.
living in the Jackson area, I'm 3 hours away from you. I could
Yeah.
always keep up with what y'all was doing because one thing that I always kept up with you all was the Christmas tournament that you had during that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Always that was always good to see, and it looked very very
Good
competitive.
tournament.
I've always wanted to jump in, but I looked at them teams on that. I said, I don't think we ready to come.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah,
I was there 12 years, one at one time, coach. I mean, I had buddies say, man, what are you doing, Owen? I mean, what are you doing, man? You come in there and lose your own tournament,
yeah,
and but no, we've had a ton of great teams there in my 12 years. I mean, we had Coach Carlisle's teams when he was at Velma Jackson.
uh-huh.
We had those guys there. We've had MRA there. We've had some fantastic teams. We've had Madison Central there with Coach Lockhart when they were really good, and they're going to be good again. They're going to have a good year. They got some young guys, had a good year this past year. But yeah, we tried to get teams from across the state, obviously, and then we bring some out of state teams in. We had a team this year, Metamora, won the state championship in Illinois. They won their last 32 games, and so fantastic team. Coach Greaves used to coach at Gulfport High. He worked with Coach Caldwell and then became the head coach. And
Cool.
yeah, so they beat Harrison Central in the finals this year. So it's always a great tournament. It's well attended, and if you're a basketball fan, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, it is, coach. And you are right. But here's the one thing to your credit. When I used to look at the bracket, 9 times out of 10, coach, you always played the hardest team that was coming or second
Yeah,
team.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I give you credit to that. So you weren't trying to just, stack it. You created it. I know
Yeah.
Meridian would come a lot of times. So
Meridian's won. Coach Norman won in a couple years. I mean, we've had a bunch of really good teams. Boo Hardy at Harrison Central's won it a couple
yeah.
times. I mean, all my buddies won it more than I have, man. What am I thinking? They come down there and beat our butt, man. But anyway, no, it was great. It was great. One thing I did at Gulfport is we always scheduled the right way. We traveled, we played a really good schedule regardless of how good we were, and obviously I think that helped us and helped our program.
Yep, you did, man. Like I was surprised at it because I saw the MRA and Gulfport. Like, man, they playing each
Hmm.
other pretty regularly, and that's a long
Yeah,
distance away. But that
yeah,
just gives
yeah.
credit to what you just said. All right, cool. I'm gonna get two more questions. I'm gonna let you go
You
because I know
got
you're
it.
a busy man. Um, I had to ask this question: South Mississippi basketball, and this is
Mhm.
always a debate among coaches.
Yeah.
Sometimes barbershop,
Yeah.
man. Where is the best basketball played? Obviously, I'm from the Jackson area, so we always say we
Mhm.
got the best basketball. You got the
Yep.
North. The North say we got the best basketball. Delta in
Mhm.
the South, and the South, you all, I feel like you all took it personal because sometimes I felt like, and I can agree to this. I do feel like a lot of times you all got left out. Maybe because
Mhm.
you were so far away from Claren Ledger, and so y'all kind of started to promote y'all own thing, not to be any type of way. But I know y'all had the South Mississippi All Star Game. I know you all would do a
Yeah.
lot of different things. Coach, talk to us about what makes South Mississippi basketball special. Kind of talk about some of the coaches of the past and the present that
Mhm.
still
Mhm.
coach now. I know a lot of guys. It's a lot of guys in the South that do a good job. And then talk about some of the players. And I'm gonna kind of
Yeah.
repeat that. Talk about what makes the South good. Talk about some of the coaches down. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot because I know how it is. You say somebody, then you left somebody out. But hopefully they
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the
Yeah.
players in the South.
I think this, when I was playing in the mid and late '80s, basketball on the coast, it was the golden age, as a lot of the media down here says. We had, you had Mahmoud, you had Laterial Green, you had Isaac Brown, you had Dale Brown, you had Antonio Harvey, you had Laterial, you had pros, all
Yeah,
right, you had NBA guys, and it was really, really good. At the same time, Jackson was great. Jackson Murrow, Hollywood Robinson,
mhm,
uh, and Galloway. I could go on and on and on about great players in Jackson. Then you could go on and on about players in the North.
yeah,
I think it's gone. It's been up and down. I think we've all had our day in the sun. I think at times basketball has been better on the coast. It's been better in Jackson. It's been better in North Mississippi. What I will say is this, though. I think that when newspapers began to shrink
yeah,
and the Clarion Ledger was not the Clarion Ledger that I grew up with, where on a Wednesday and a Saturday you could open a newspaper and there would be a box score from every high school game in the state if the
yeah,
coach would call it in. And you could get that newspaper on Wednesday and literally cover the whole state. They covered the scoring leaders, had everybody's record. There was so much information there, but they had a whole staff of sports writers. Now they don't, and they just can't cover like they once covered. So if you're at a newspaper in Jackson, you got a really small budget, you're going to cover your area. That's what people in your area want to see. Same thing with the Sun Herald down on the coast. They've really shrunk. Everything's digital now. They've got maybe one guy writing sports, maybe two, and he lives in Mobile. So I think with newspapers shrinking, it's hurt getting the word out. Now social media is taking the place of that.
yeah,
But I think it's not the same. I mean, well, you could get stats, you could get records, you got everything, and that was the newspaper's job to keep up with those things. I hate that it's not that way anymore, but it
yeah,
is what it is. But I do think this, and I think you would agree with this. I think that basketball across the state has gotten better. Now, the JPS and what it used to be.
It's not.
It's not. The JPS, and I don't, and I'm a homer to the coast, but the JPS year in year out for a long time was the best place for basketball in the state of Mississippi. If you wanted to go see the highest quality teams and players night in, night out, you would go watching the JPS. I don't think you can say that anymore, though. And I don't know the reasons for that. I think kids are moving out. I mean, Northwest Rankin, what a job the coach has done there at
Yeah,
Northwest Rankin, but they won a state championship this year. Would you ever thought that growing up in
nope.
Jackson that Northwest Rankin would be competing for state championships in basketball? Look
Yeah,
what
sure.
Clinton has done. Look
Yeah,
what Raymond's, another suburb. Look what they've done. So I think in Jackson, people are maybe getting out of the JPS and going, Brandon's had a great run. They've had a lot of great teams. So I think it's constantly changing. And North Mississippi has a long, long history of great basketball. You know, especially those smaller schools. There's not as many bigger schools up there. But let me say this, and then I'll move on to players. But in the district that I was in at Gulfport High, it was us, Biloxi, Harrison Central, and Hancock. Now it's gone to, there's 6 teams. They've gone to 7A now. But in our district alone, Gulfport High had 9 state championships. Biloxi High had 5 state championships. Harrison Central had 3 state championships. Hancock High had 1. That's a lot of state championships in one district. I would put that up against any district in the state. I don't know if anybody could say that throughout history to have that many state championships in 4 teams. So a lot of history everywhere. You know, the guy I always is going to remember on the coast is Mahmoud. You know, obviously I played with him, Laterial Green. I played against James Hollywood Robinson in high school at Murrah. What a great player he was. I don't know that I've seen many guys as fast as Hollywood was with the ball. Could
Yeah,
just really, really, really change ends. Uh, he got in his last high school game, we beat them my senior year. We upset them. They were number 1 team in the state. They lost in the district final, so they had to travel.
so yeah, I remember.
We come down. He had 41 and didn't score in the fourth quarter. That's how good he was
Yeah,
at Gulfport. We ended up beating them at the very end, but I think he had 41 or 43 and didn't score in the fourth quarter. Just got cold, and but he was fantastic. He was fantastic, and I remember all those good Jackson Murrah teams. We always battle with them, and Callaway. You know, Callaway had some good runs there as well, but you know, the guy I think about in Jackson is Coach Jordan at Murrah High School, and then Coach Billups.
mhm.
And then obviously we look what Coach Brent's done. But the guys that I came up with, those are the guys that kind of I think laid the groundwork for the coaches to come along. Luther Riley, Wayne Brent to do the things they've done. And then on the coast, it was Coach Jenkins. It was Coach Laird at Biloxi High School. It was Coach Haynes at Moss Point. Had a lot of great teams. So our state has been blessed with all across the state with just great coaches.
Yeah, it really has, man. And again, as you get older and you really become a historian of the game, you realize that there is great basketball everywhere. I didn't really understand about North Mississippi basketball until about 6 years ago when I was at Pisgah and we were in the
Mhm.
North, and I started to just realize there's so much rich heritage, and man, they bleed
Yes.
basketball because a lot of those small
Yes.
schools up there, they don't even have football. Basketball is
No.
their king. And you're right, coach. Coach, you hit some very good points, man, and it shows that you're very knowledgeable about basketball. Yeah, I kept up with it, but I lost it. Jackson had won a state championship, either girls or boys, consecutively like 11, 12 years in a row.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
and it was I can't remember when it dated back to, but when I saw that run end, and it was a couple of years ago, it was tough to see that. And I think what you're saying, there's a lot of different reasons people are moving out, and I think it is
Hmm.
that talent across because you said that
Yeah.
the surrounding cities are growing. Like for example, man, Ridgeland High School gonna be
Didn't even
pretty.
mention them. Yeah.
They're gonna be pretty good this year.
They're going to be real good. I saw them this summer, really like their team, you know,
Yeah,
and
they are, man.
they got a
Uh,
good team, got some good players.
They do. They got a big kid too, coach. They say I think he's like maybe 6'9", 6'10", maybe taller than that.
Think he came in from California, maybe. He moved in. He was a move in. Yeah, nice player. And got a junior guard there that's really good, and got a senior guard that's going to be a good player. Nice team.
It really is, coach. I'm thinking about some of the players that I saw. One of the probably the I had an opportunity to coach against Devin Booker. Moss Point came down.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I was the interim coach at Murrah for I think in 2012, and I heard about this kid, and everybody was saying this kid, 10th grade, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, man, we Murrah High School, and we were doing pretty good. So I did my research about it. Man, came down, put a show on, and beat us at the buzzer, man. Like it was 3 guys hanging off of Devin, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I became a Devin Booker fan. Um, he was good to see. I remember when I was young. I remember Shea Christie. I think he went to was it
Yeah. I went to Biloxi High School. Went to Biloxi
Shea
High School.
Christie,
Yeah.
obviously Isaiah Cannon. Those things were
Yes.
they were great talent in Mississippi, man. And I'm gonna say this, and I've always wanted to say this, and no knock to it. I believe that Devin should have won Mr. Basketball one of those years, but I think what they should have done is just to keep anything down because Malik had a great year as well. It should have been a co-Mr. Basketball. And I know people
Yeah.
may disagree with that, but both of them had great seasons. But to not give Booker anything, that was tough, coach. I'm a
Yeah.
Jack guy,
Yeah.
but I
And
thought,
that's where and that's where some of that chip on our shoulder from the coach comes from.
yep,
And look, Malik, an unbelievable player, had a great
yeah,
high school career. Obviously, none of us can look into the future and project what was going to happen. I mean, I'll tell you, I knew Devin Booker was going to be a really good player. He's got a great family. His father's just an incredible man and brought him up the right way and all those things. His mom was heavily involved with him, but I had no idea he would be this good. I mean, he's arguably the best two guard in the world right now. I mean, he is fantastic and it's a great story. And I don't think he ever started a game at Kentucky,
nope,
and was a lottery pick. And here he is, one of the top 5, 10 players in the world right now.
yep. Yeah, that's amazing to be able to see that. Man, coach,
Yeah.
I'm excited, man, just about this episode. I know it got to wrap up, but I can't leave. This is our most popular question on the podcast, and I know everybody wants to be able to hear your opinion. Coach, what would be your NBA starting five of all time?
Oh, of
Man,
all time.
all
Well,
time.
I got to go with MJ. I got to go with the GOAT.
All
All
right.
right. I got to have him. Um, I got to go with Magic.
Okay.
Okay, I got to go with Magic Johnson. Huge Magic Johnson fan.
Yeah.
I would go with Kareem at center.
Kareem.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at center.
Okay.
Um, I would go. So I've got Jordan. I've got Kareem, and I've got Magic.
Magic.
I'm gonna go with Larry Bird,
Okay.
and I'm gonna go with Kobe Bryant. That'd be
Kobe
my
Bryant.
starting five. It's a bunch of Lakers. You can tell I'm a Laker fan.
I see it, coach.
Yeah,
Coach,
yeah.
that's not a bad lineup, man. I like it. Magic. You got Mike. You got Kobe. You got Kareem. You got Larry Bird. Man, that's a great list. I'm gonna say this. Michael Jordan has been on everybody's list except for one guy's, and he's a young guy. I think
Okay,
he was born like in 2000. So, but
okay, okay.
Jordan has been king, man. Magic has been there consecutively with point guards.
Mhm.
It's almost 50-50 now because some of the young guys got Steph Curry right there. So Magic and
Sure, sure, sure.
but
Yeah,
that's a very good lineup, coach.
yeah.
Uh,
I went with some of the older cats too. So yeah, gotta represent them.
that's what's up, man. Coach, I thank you for a great episode. This part here is a conclusion. We call it the last shot. For those who may be new to the podcast, and as our coach take the last shot, is their opportunity to maybe recognize someone, shout somebody out, say something motivational. It's kind of their platform to be able to say whatever they want. So, Coach, the floor is open, man, and you take the last shot.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me, and thank you, Coach, for what you're doing and promoting coaches and promoting the game of basketball. We're an open book here. We would love to have any coaches, anybody come watch us practice. I've already had some coaches from the clinic want some of our stuff. And if you're watching, we're going to be getting that out and getting it to you. But we want to be a resource for basketball in the state of Mississippi, and we want to represent the coaches of Mississippi well. And our league, the Mississippi Junior College League, is a great league with great coaches, and we've had a ton of good players. So this is a great opportunity. And man, you keep doing what you're doing, keep promoting, keep living it, and keep your faith right. And man, we appreciate what you're doing and promoting our game and promoting us people as well to get out there and talk some ball and talk life.
Coach, I thank you for saying that, man. Coach, you're definitely a genuine guy, man, through in and throughout. Thank you for giving me an opportunity just to be able to talk with you, and definitely prayerfully our relationship continue to foster through just this conversation, excuse me. And Coach, again, like I said, I'm gonna get out to a game. It's probably gonna be when y'all come back up this way, just to be
Yeah,
able to show support, man,
absolutely.
and just support what you have. Definitely be praying for you and great success, man. I thank you for joining the In the Sand podcast family. You're always going to be a part of what we're doing. And I just thank you to all of our listeners. Please come out and support Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Coach Owen Miller got a lot of great stuff going on. Top class guy. He's for those high school students. or players, excuse me, or coaches listening, man, give coach a chance, man. Talk to him. He's very approachable. He's going to care about your kids. He's going to work hard, and he's going to be honest with you and give you a true evaluation of what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a place to play, definitely don't look past Coach Miller in that matter of it. Again, representing for South Mississippi and the state of Mississippi as a whole. So until next time, as I always say, be kind and be nice to someone, and we'll see you all on the next episode.